And welcome, Hoosier fans, to our ninth episode of a new show called The Hoosier Sound. I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I am delighted to present you with this brand new podcast. We are an IU centered podcast that focuses on IU sports such as basketball, football, and more from the point of view as a student or a young adult. To end each show, we will also give our view on hot takes from around the world of sports. Normally, we will be going live every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. But if you miss us live, you can subscribe to our various networks so you can listen on your own time. We are now on iTunes or Apple Podcast, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and our live stream will be posted on our YouTube page after each recording. All you got to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts and just hit subscribe. If you're on YouTube, just click that little box in the right-hand corner. All the videos will then pop up for you when they are published. It's really simple, really easy, and it would mean a lot to us if you guys just hit that subscribe button for us. Social media is also big for us, and we post updates for you guys in Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you give us a like and a follow, as well as subscribe in our YouTube account. All the information is in the description below. You can also check out our website, thehoosiersound.wordpress.com, to find out all of our information in one place. There have been a few updates to the show this week. Today, we were scheduled to do the show with the Assembly Call's very own Jared Morris. Something came up last minute, and we had to reschedule the episode with him. This episode has now been moved to tomorrow, Wednesday, at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Let me repeat that again. Episode moved tomorrow, Wednesday, November 8th, at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. You really don't want to miss out on hearing what Jared has to say. For all of you who don't know, he is one of the hosts and the founders of the very popular show called The Assembly Call. The Assembly Call has one simple goal: to give IU basketball fans a place online to hang out immediately after every game to discuss their Hoosiers. In addition, they also have a weekly show where they talk about other IU basketball topics. In addition, Jared is also the host of a popular podcast called Podcast on the Brink, which is another great show to get anything and everything IU basketball related. As a Hoosier fan, I've been listening to both of these podcasts for some time now, and I highly, highly recommend these shows. Jared also runs The Showrunner and Sites, which are other great mediums to help with creating your own show and website. He's a huge deal in the world of sports, blogging, and IU sports, so make sure you stay tuned when we get to go on the air with him tomorrow. I'll repeat that again. Please tune in to tomorrow for our episode at 4 o'clock, or if you miss us, catch it after, because you really won't want to miss this. All right, Hoosier fans, it's time for some IU sports talk. Skibby and Matt can't be here today, so I'm just going to be at the helm of this all by myself. But I'm going to start with Wisconsin. This past weekend, Hoosier football, they lost their fourth game in a row to Wisconsin Badgers, 45-17. The game really was a lot closer than the score might have shown, because there were two interceptions in the fourth quarter in IU's own territory, and then a turnover on downs in their own territory. And it was basically a one-possession game until the beginning of the fourth quarter. So the score, a tired defense, which I'll get into in a second, basically just had to gave in a few plays because Wisconsin had a short field. So it really was a lot closer game than it might have seemed if you didn't get to catch the game. IU, they really played their hearts out for most of the game until the fourth quarter, which I just said. Offense. I know Wisconsin has a really, really good running defense, one of the best in the nation, but our run game is something that really needs to be completely reevaluated in the off season. Period. Enough said. I'm not going to go into any more detail about that. We've talked about the running game. It needs to be reevaluated. There's nothing there any game. But I was glad to see that they were able to use Lego and show that he can still be effective. Now, I personally think that we need a balance between both of them. I really did like the two quarterback system using Lego and Ramsey. For example, like you could have Lego do most of the field, and then once you get into the red zone, have Peyton push it in, because that's his strong suit, and Lego can't really push it in through the red zone. But I was really glad that Lego could showcase a lot of his talents. Now, he did have that interception in the fourth quarter, 2 of them. The first one was his fault. The second one was a tip pass by Luke Timian, which was 0% fault of his own. It wasn't even a poorly placed ball. It was just Timian just couldn't ring it in, and then the Wisconsin scooped it up after it tipped. But reiterating something that we say every week, it's amazing what happens when we just throw it in the direction of Simi Cobbs. I don't know why we did throw to him a bunch of times this game, but I don't know why we just don't do it more. Wisconsin had a lot of one-on-one press defense against Simi Cobbs, and even just adding that press defense part gives him such a huge advantage. He's such a much bigger than most of these cornerbacks, and I don't know why he's not getting thrown to 60% of the time, honestly. But IU defense, Lego threw an interception in our own territory, that his first one at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and I think that was the tipping point for our defense. Our defense was on the field way too long, and they got tired, which you can't blame them. The offense had been stalling, and when they were on the field, their up-tempo offense just kept IU's defense on the field too long. So not only was Wisconsin pounding out these really long drives, and even when IU's offense stalled and had to go 3 and out, when the IU's offense was still on the field, they had that up-tempo offense, which I like, but still they had their up-tempo offense, which just had less time for the defense to really rest. Wisconsin had virtually 40 minutes of possession time to our 20 minutes. That's outrageous. 35 to 25 is usually like a wide margin, but they had the ball for 2/3 of the game. That no matter how good any defense that is, the defense is going to get tired, and when it matters the most in the fourth quarter to a really good opponent like Wisconsin, they're not going to make mistakes. Our starters, when they get tired, we don't really have a lot of backups that are the same quality as our starters, and going against a Wisconsin team that their backups are really good as well, that's the defense is just not going to be able to hold. But for the IU defense, for the most part, it was they held Wisconsin to 24 points up to the fourth quarter, which it still could have been less, but I'll get into that later. The IU passing defense actually looked really, really good. They held Wisconsin to 170 passing yards when Wisconsin had the ball for 2/3 of the game. I mean, 170 passing yards is a decent amount, but when you think of how long Wisconsin had the ball, 170 yards that's not a lot of yards. Say you just knock down 5, maybe even 7 or 8 minutes, that probably gets closer to only 100 passing yards. The run defense is something that needs to be worked on a lot. Wisconsin ran well over 200 yards against us, and rightly so with their really good running back, but still, I think overall, they played really well for a pretty injured defense, and being on the field for 40 minutes. And if you take away basically the end of the last quarter, it was really good. And you also got to notice that at least 4 drives, if not more, were where Wisconsin started in IU's territory. And no matter how good the defense is and how bad the offense is, a short field is going to give time for that opponent offense just to score, especially if you just start in field goal range automatically. 2 more things. One of the things that frustrated me the most about this game was the ending of the first half. We stopped Wisconsin, and they had to punt the ball. We had all 3 timeouts left, and there was roughly 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock right when we stopped Wisconsin to bring 4th down up for them. We had all 3 timeouts. Like I said, we could have called a timeout to stop the clock. So we would have had about 1.5 minutes with 2 timeouts to march down the field and see if we could get anything. That's 1.5 minutes with Lego at the helm of this offense, who can actually drive down the field and drive down pretty well, honestly. Last week I talked about his 2-minute drive for a touchdown against Maryland after coming in cold, after not playing for even 2 or 3 games. And we just let the clock run down. We ran the ball. We took a knee. We let Wisconsin run it down, and that was after Wisconsin just had the ball. They just had the ball after multiple series of unfortunate drives for IU. We could have had some good before Wisconsin got the ball to start the second half. Basically, just having the defense on from like 6 or 7 minutes on in the second quarter, all the way through the beginning of the third quarter, and I don't know why we didn't even just give it a try. That frustrates me so much. Because it frustrated me also when Kevin Wilson would do that. He was even worse about it. We would have 50, 60 seconds, 3 timeouts. He would just knee the ball. And we would never get any time to score at the ends of halves. And I thought that could have gone away with a new coaching staff, but I guess not. Lastly, the refs. I try to stay away from talking about some of the refs, but I know the past few weeks have been really frustrating for IU fans, and it needs to be mentioned somewhat, which I feel like we'll just talk about it and maybe see if you can think of some of these plays in a different lens. So the first one that Hoosier fans at the game were very frustrated with was that unsportsmanlike conduct when Luke Timian was trying to fair catch the ball. So for those that didn't see, Wisconsin was punting. Timian was calling for a fair catch, and he was just from in the stands. All IU fans could see was Luke Timian just got blown up before even the ball came down. When you look at the replay again, you see an IU guy running alongside the Wisconsin player, and the ref said that he was pushed into Luke Timian, therefore it wasn't an unsportsmanlike conduct. I might not necessarily agree with how close it was pushed. I don't know. That call wasn't really what I was as frustrated with. It was frustrating to see Luke Timian get basically pummeled and then slow to get up and then have the flag get taken back, basically. But I can see that the refs had a justifiable means at the end of that. But then the other play that just had IU fans going crazy about was the IU fumble around 7 minutes left in the second quarter. When they were first reviewing this call, I turned to Matt, and he told me that the refs were going to find some way to overturn this. With how obvious this play was, I know that the refs treat this IU team, how they treat this IU team sometimes with Big Ten refs, really, that stereotype that Big Ten refs treat the higher opponents better, and the lower level teams never get those calls. But I just kept thinking, there's no way that they could overturn this. I thought it was too obvious of a call, and boy, was I wrong. First and foremost, I don't think there was enough substantial, which that's the huge keyword, substantial evidence to overturn this fumble. And I disagree with that part of the call. I think that's the main part that I really, one of the main parts I really disagree with that call. That being said, let's say that there was substantial evidence. So let's dive into what the refs might have been thinking with that call. So the play, Morgan Ellison was running, and as he was being tackled, Tyler Johnson on Wisconsin grabbed the ball as Ellison was falling. Johnson did and took it away before the ball basically popped up and went flying backwards. This is where I didn't see enough evidence that Ellison's thigh was or was not down before the ball left his possession. I think his butt and his thigh were touching the ground before the ball basically left his hands. But let's keep playing it out. Johnson did take away the ball, so there was. Regardless of when Ellison should have been deemed down, Johnson did take the ball away, and he had possession of the ball. Now, if the refs decided that Ellison wasn't down and Johnson had possession, his knees were down as well. So Wisconsin would have had a clean fumble and a recovery if that were the call. But that wasn't the call. I could have lived with that. I might not have agreed because, like I said, I don't think it was enough evidence that Ellison's knee wasn't down, but I could have I could have lived with that call that Johnson took it away, and since Ellison was touching him, he would have been down. But the refs called something different. As the ball was flying backwards after both Ellison and Johnson had the ball, the backfield ref had basically sprinted towards the pile, blowing his whistle very frantically, motioning a downward sign with his hand, saying that the ball was down and that there was no fumble, basically. When the ref blew his whistle, no matter what happens in a replay or anything, the ball is deemed dead, and nothing whatsoever after that, after the whistle, nothing whatsoever in the play is supposed to be counted. The ref blew the whistle, and who knows? IU players could have let up from trying to retrieve the ball. Wisconsin clearly recovered the ball, but that was after the whistle had been blown, and there should have been no ball to recover since the refs blew the whistle literally 5 or 6 times. The refs during the instant replay said that Ellison lost the ball, and it was covered by Wisconsin after the ball had basically been flying around, and it was whistled dead. I think that's just completely unacceptable for the refs who to blatantly ignore that part of the play. It's really hard to keep defending these refs week in and week out and give them some benefit of the doubt when they keep making these quote unquote mistakes. I understand getting a call wrong on the field. I really do, but it's completely different when the play is reviewed and they leave out a critical piece of the play. I even went up to look up the rules in the NCAA handbook, and in Rule 4, Section 1, Article 2, it states that when a ball is loose from a fumble, whether it be backward pass or legal pass, then the team in possession may elect to put the ball in play where possession was lost or repeat the down. The exception to that rule was basically the instant replay, but that didn't necessarily matter there. The ball was whistled down. It doesn't matter what happens after that. Tom Allen said that the refs went over to him and told him that when they reviewed it, there was no whistle that was blown, which when I heard that the refs had said that and Tom Allen said that, I was speechless. I could hear the backline ref blowing his whistle and motioning a down sign that the play was dead from across the entire stadium. I was on the opposite side of the field and everyone could see that. I should stop talking about it because it's making me upset. But this led to Wisconsin having the ball on the IU 21-yard line, which that caliber of Wisconsin team, they were going to score. Momentum changed after a series of bad plays, and it just put the icing on the cake for how Big Ten refs treat the better opponents in the Big Ten. But let's move on to some better news with IU facing the Illini, Illinois, this coming up weekend. They go on the road, as they will for most of the rest of the season. And I got one home game left against Rutgers, and they play Illinois at noon. This year, it seems like any Big Ten game IU faces, especially on the road, that IU isn't going to get it done. But there's some good news about this Illinois team, Hoosier Nation, and they've lost their last 7 games in a row. And they are also winless in the Big Ten. Sadly, we are the only 2 teams that are now winless in the Big Ten. But let's dive into some of this Illinois team. Their defense isn't terrible. They've been holding their opponents to lower scores than you might think for this kind of Illinois team. All their losses have been somewhat close, within 1 or 2, maybe 3 possessions. But realistically, even for an IU team who is underperforming what we all think they were capable of, this should be an easy win, even on the road. Illinois is last in the Big Ten for a reason, and even if IU doesn't handle their business and ramp up for their final 2 games for the bowl game, the season's going to be over. Illinois likes to run the ball a lot with their offense. Their top rusher, it's hard to see this with stat. Their top rusher only has 346 yards per game and 3 touchdowns total, but they do average 116.1 yards on the ground, which it's not terrible. So they really like to share the ball. Their QB is somewhat close to the kind of caliber of QB as Wisconsin, just on a semi much lower scale. He's passed for just over 1,000 yards, so on the lower end, obviously, only 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So they don't average a lot of yards per game. So if our defense is going to be the good defense that we usually see, Illinois should get less than 300 yards per game, maybe even less than 200 yards. Who knows? Maybe even 250 yards. I mean, maybe even less than, we could see less than 200 yards. Depends on what kind of defense shows up and how injured our defense is. But going over to the other side of the ball with Illinois, their defense, they give up over 400 yards per game. They gave up 680 yards to USF South Florida. And so they have the potential to give up a lot of yards. Let's hope this offense can get something going. And honestly, I just want to see a consistent offense throughout the game. IU basically needs a blowout victory to give this committee, the committees, something to work on to see if they can make a bowl game, especially if, say, we have a 5-7 record that's still bowl eligible, but we need something to show them we weren't just beating Charleston Southern. Keys to the game, we need to come out with an easy win, no injuries, and just hopefully get healthier, see if we can get any players back. Predictions, I think IU is going to win comfortably for the first time in a while with 31-13. Our last segment, I'm going to talk about IU basketball. They had their last exhibition game against UIndy and won in an interesting game, 74-53. This game had a lot of ups and downs. I'll start with the offense. I still personally think, I know Matt thinks otherwise, I still think this offense is a little troubling, especially putting up only 74 points to UIndy. And I know it's early, but that's got to be a focal point for this team to just be consistent on offense. I really think consistent offense is going to be something that this IU basketball team needs to do. I don't think they need to put up 80 points a game, but I just think they need to be consistent week in and week out. We need more points from the guys off the bench, though. If you take out Freddie and Hartman for this game, the rest of the team only had 10 total points, which is a little unacceptable past those two coming off the bench. And free throws, 57.9% is unacceptable. Any point in the game, any point of the season, doesn't matter what. That's totally unacceptable. Especially Devontae missing 3 shots in a row. That's totally unacceptable. You guys need to fix that. There were a couple, we're still on the offense, a couple bad turnovers, but on the flip side, that's honestly a good turnovers were a positive from this game because we only committed 8 turnovers. That includes when the backups came off the bench in garbage time, which before the garbage time stuff, there was basically only 4 turnovers till then, which is incredible. IU has only given up 18 turnovers in the first 2 exhibition games compared to last year where they gave up 40 turnovers in first 2 exhibition games. Good habits, obviously, these are not great teams, but good habits, they roll over into the season. Obviously, we just want to have good habits, and even when we play better teams, it's going to change a little bit. Rebounding, I'm probably going to be in the minority with this, but I wasn't necessarily sold on the rebounding this game. It wasn't what it usually is, and hear me out, because I don't think the stat sheet tells the whole story. For the entire first half and the beginning of the second half, when UIndy was still in the game, and it was a close score. IU was not even trying to rebound. I would watch shots go up, and I was my seat was basically next to the court with the students, and no one would go underneath. The only people that would go up whenever they were in the game was Colin Hartman and Freddie McSwain. They were the only ones that would consistently go get a rebound. Duran didn't even rebound a lot in the first half, which it was a close score. We didn't rebound. That being said, when IU started to rebound better, they started to play better. That's when they pulled out and they pulled away in the second half. When you have 16 offensive rebounds and 16 second chance points, it's going to show. So I just want to see more effort on more of the plays instead of seeing an IU shot go up, and literally multiple times I saw all 5 IU players just start jogging back. I don't like to see that. It's you never know where a ball might land to where you can get more offensive rebounds, but Let's move on to the defense. Again, had its ups and downs. The good held them to 53 points, regardless of Indy was shooting poorly. Any team that we're playing, even some of the lower level teams, it doesn't matter. Holding 53 points, that's still a plus. Just to keep reiterating, this team is improving and it's going to be good. This is going to be a really good defense. I liked the aggressive perimeter guarding. They were guarding the guards about 3 or 4 feet past the arc, which shows how this defense, they really trust each other, especially to see if all that help is going to come in if someone blows by them. And at one point during the game, I even heard Archie calling out for solid defense for Devontae when he came in the first half. After he was probably sitting for not great defense, it was just nice to see Archie just be like, hey, Devontae, you got to make sure you got good defense right after he came in the game. Otherwise, basically, you're going to sit again. Bad. We were a lot slower than normal, I thought, than the first couple of games. Obviously, the delay could have had something to do with it. Could have had something to do with how he's shooting. I don't know. I thought Cujo in Curtis Jones in particular could literally never seem to guard one of their quick guards. He was always late to react, and he always dragged his feet. When we know he can go quicker. He's very explosive on the offensive end. That's why he's going to get a lot of playing time with Archie not liking to use a deep bench. But I thought he really needs to look at the hips instead of looking at the head, because these guards were juking him out pretty easily, and I want him to get better on defense so he can stay in the game longer. Overall, Indy was getting in the lane for inside drives and inside passes that usually doesn't happen, and that's something Archie wants to eliminate. It just shows how slow everyone was today, basically. But I want to talk about a couple players before we wrap up here. Colin Hartman, really awesome to see him back. He got a standing ovation from everyone when he went in for the first time. Every time he came to the bench or came into the game, people were cheering. Whenever he was within earshot of the students, there was nothing but cheers for him. He had a lot of great shots. He was a little slow, but honestly, that's to be expected when you haven't played in 589 days. Was the last time he played on that March 28th game against the UNC, and we don't have to talk about that game. But Rojo felt like he made less of a difference than the box score might have said. He wasn't making a lot of good shots at times, but he still ended up with 18 points, which is good. He was audibly frustrated multiple times during the game, which was interesting because you never see him frustrated, even when he has bad games. It's early. He's a senior, and he's been used to a system for 3 years now, and it's going to take him some time to find a new role and find what he's going to be comfortable in. But after the first 2 games, still got a lot of work to do, and when he's supposed to be the main guy. Juwan, I'm not going to say too much. I don't know where he is. I think it's going to turn around, but I just like to see that he's healthy. But the last 2 players that I really liked from this game was Freddie. He really turned his game around from last year. He had always been putting up great numbers for how many minutes he had gotten, but he just never got a lot of minutes. Now he's got to play. Last game, he was 13 minutes, 12 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 offensive rebounds. That's incredible. He's probably going to be the backup center as it's looking now. But Duran started out a little rough, ended up having a really consistent game, and honestly, one of the best games he's ever played. First game in and Hoosier history, we didn't really see much from him, but he's improving, and that's what Archie wants to see. He got 11 points, 5 blocks, and only 2 fouls when he played for 24 minutes, which was the 3rd most minutes. And that was about the amount of minutes he had last year, if not more, and he had more points, more blocks, and less fouls, which was incredible. Great defense, great post play, and he drew a lot of fouls. He drew about 5 fouls, if I counted correctly, which was awesome. Lastly, Archie, he was visibly upset for the most game when the offense didn't run what he wanted, when there were bad turnovers, when the defense was too slow, you name it. He was upset, which is a great sign because he has really high expectations for this team. When IU ran an offensive play and executed it well, he basically threw up his arms and said, see, obviously, Hoosier Nation loves Archie, but every game I just pick up on more and more things about why I love him and his coaching style, and I'm really comfortable with him being our coach for the long term. Next up, the Hoosiers have their first official game this Friday at 7 p.m. in Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall against Indiana State. But that about wraps it up for our 9th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and please feel free to add suggestions in the comment section or contact us through our website. A reminder to follow us on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, like our Facebook page, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube. If you enjoy the show, these are vital for receiving updates about our show. So just like scheduling the changes with the assembly call, make sure you really follow us on the social media. You can also subscribe on either Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and leave us a review. All the links are in the description below. Visit us at our website, thehoosiersound.wordpress.com, to find all of our information regarding our podcast, and stay tuned for updates through social media. As always, send us your questions as the audience. Be sure to comment, chat, send us a message, whatever, and we'll get them on the next episode. Lastly, if you enjoy the show, leave us a review. It really helps us, and it really helps the podcast grow. Tell a friend, share our link, text someone, you name it. But thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.